odds are you all know who Stephen King is. If you haven't heard of him, you've probably seen one of his books adapted into a movie like The Shining, Shawshank Redemption, or recently Pet Sematary, It, or coming out soon, Dr. Sleep. And if you still don't know who he is, obviously you're lying to me, because the dude has made over 60 books or has sold over 350 million copies. So you get the point. Stephen King has been around for a very long time, writing the latest horror story, good or bad.
What the fuck?
You've had your whole fucking life to think things over. What good's a few minutes more gonna do you now?
I'll let you decide which one of those was the good and bad one. With his first published book, Carrie, that came out in 1973, Hollywood would notice the young author and 3 years later make Carrie, 1976, first Stephen King horror movie. This would set off a chain reaction of Stephen King stories, short or novels, into movies, TV shows, miniseries, you name it. So let's dive in. Within 10 years, Hollywood has been remaking movies that they've made already based on King's novels instead of adapting new source material. Whether that be for a cash grab or an advancement in technology, Hollywood has been struggling to make original content. They've been focusing on remakes, reboots, sequels, and everything has to be connected in a cinematic universe. Yeah, that's for another video. But for now, I'm going to take a look at philosopher Walter Benjamin and see what he has to say about this. He claims that nothing is more revealing than the nature of the repercussions that these two different manifestations, the reproduction of works of art and the art of the film, have had on art in its traditional form. What Benjamin is stating, that as art reaches more mass production, that art is missing something from its original source material. The term he uses to describe this statement is called aura. I'll get into that in a sec. So let's look at the man himself, Stephen King. As I stated earlier, he's sold over 300 million copies of his books, and those books have been adapted into at least 100 different types of art. Yet Benjamin would argue that none of that is original. For Benjamin, the true form of art is its first format as it was intended. This is where the term aura comes up, and he explains it as a symptomatic process whose significant points beyond the realm of art. One might generalize by saying the technique of reproduction detaches the reproduced object from the domain of tradition. By making many reproductions, it substitutes a plurality of copes for a unique existence. If we look at King's critically acclaimed book, The Shining, which was published in 1977, only 3 years later, Stanley Kubrick would make one of my favorite movies of all time, The Shining. This is an adaptation of Stephen King's novel, yet very loosely based around it. Some would say better. To the point where Stephen King was so outraged that 17 years later he would make his own miniseries about his own book, and he would be the writer for that screenplay. So let's look at this from the perspective of Benjamin's aura. He'd look at Kubrick's film as further away from the true art since the story's true form was the book. But King's miniseries was written by King himself for the screen, yet it's based off the original book still. So would Benjamin say King's version is its own art since it's not necessarily based on the novel since he wrote the novel as well? It's hard to say. Benjamin wrote this in 1936, pretty much right before Hollywood started its transition into 1940s and how they made movies up till today. I don't think Benjamin would know how big our nerd culture is right now. Disney is unstoppable with their remakes, and King's books, which were adapted into movies, are now being remade 20 to 30 years later, and the profit is showing. So does aura hold when it comes to looking at different forms of art? I think it just depends on who you ask. For me, I think you could take something like a book or a video game in its true original art form and expand what that artist did there and take your own spin on it through a different art form. And that being its own thing, inspired by the original art form, but not being devaluated from it and its original form. Whew, damn, how many times did I say the word art in this video? Well, that's enough.